Good morning. Welcome to Zen with a Smile. This morning I'd like to talk about fact, fiction, or opinion. When we look at the history of mankind, again, in these days of politically correct language, mankind either ignores or subjugates half of the population. Some people don't really, they think maybe politically correct has been overdone. But I use the word mankind just to make a point here. I believe that language should be inclusive, not exclusive. We're all in this together. So we certainly shouldn't either subjugate or ignore half of who we are. So again, humankind. If you look at the history of humankind, you'll see certain obvious stages. The first stage, as I see it, is concentration on survival. Let's meet our daily needs, from hunt and gathering to squat and row to farmers. This is a transition that was involved about survival. We need food. We need protection from the elements. And it wasn't too long that this focus of survival kind of expanded into warfare. Let's kill each other. And then defenses, strategies became involved. And sad to say that this kind of evolution, lack of evolution, where we wanted to eliminate each other, is still very much with us. And the next stage, as I see it, again, oversimplification is sometimes useful to make a point, to direct this discussion to where I'm going. We got the Word of God, at least in the Western history, the Word of God. Here it is, this is the Word. No longer are we concerned about solely with survival. We want to be more sophisticated about our joining together, the birth of cities, the growth of cities. And at this time, a common denominator, something that allowed the powers that be to keep the powers that they had gotten. Warfare, conquest. They came up with, some brilliant guy came up with the Word of God, the Bible. Who's going to argue with God? Yes. Shut up and listen. Yeah, the Word of God. And this sustained, in one degree or one level of success or lack of success, it sustained humankind. Now we can defer to the Word of God. And if we were fortunate enough to be in control, to be the elite, we could justify our actions and say, God told me so. Okay? So, we see the growth of belief in higher source, belief in control above and beyond. This was beliefs, sustained, supported by beliefs. Well, then the doctrine, slowly but surely, as science came to fore, as science became the new religion, so to speak. New religion in the sense that it had its canons, scientific law, the concept of facts, establishing facts. Now we didn't look to above, to coming down. We looked to our scientific class, a new class, who would take a theory, take an idea, develop a theory, look to support the theory, look to validate the theory with facts, facts that were logically derived, facts that could be duplicated in laboratory conditions. We took from beliefs which are experiential. You experience these beliefs. We went to experimental. Experimental could be duplicated. It could be run by different groups of people separated by miles and miles and miles and cultures. Could be duplicated, be replicated, and with the same results. So experiential versus experimental. Now experiential was kind of put on the back burner because as far as science was concerned, experience can't normally be supported. It can't go through the process of an idea to a theory to a law. From idea, theory to fact. Experiential was mental, physical, emotional, interior. It involved beliefs. And although science would say that we are going to question beliefs, it came from a questioning. What's the facts? Or is any belief, is it based in any measurable, quantifiable phenomenon in the earthly plane? If it couldn't be, it would be discarded. So I think almost conveniently, science adopted a new canon, a new set of laws. I remember studying the scientific laws as a youngster in my science classes. I'm kind of questioning then, Firstly, what's the difference between a law from God, the Ten Commandments, and scientific set of laws and phenomena? Both ignored pretty obvious things. Science ignored what man learned from experience, and replaced it with facts. Well, those facts, the history of facts is pretty interesting. We all knew at one point the earth was flat. We also knew that the whole universe revolved around the earth. Well, conveniently, science was able to learn more and say, well, gee, that was a fact then, now we're going to replace it with a new, better, improved fact. So remember, this is talking about fact, fiction, or opinion. I mentioned yesterday about opinion. All opinions are equally valid or equally invalid, depending on how you want to look at them. My opinion is, by its very nature, is no better than your opinion. My opinion, by its very nature, is no better than somebody with exact opposite opinion. I mentioned earlier that I have an opinion, this is my opinion, that politically correct, what we call politically correct language, is a good thing. And I hear a lot of Trump and his followers saying, we're tired of politically correct. We're tired, we want to say what we're really thinking. Why mince words? Why indeed? And I mentioned earlier, the why for me is a simple one. I want to be inclusive, not exclusive. I don't want to eliminate beings or things, places and people. I want to include them because as close as I've been able to figure, we're all part and parcel. We're all one and the same thing. So let's start from there. And let's use language that emphasizes, that embraces this concept of no separation. Because indeed, it's separation. It's a sense of otherness that are the source of both personal problems and problems on a more multiplicity, a bigger level. So we pretty much established, at least to my satisfaction, for whatever that's worth, is that opinions, everybody has one, everybody is entitled to, and all opinions have equal validity or equal invalidity. Let's look at facts. We talked about science and how the flat earth and the universe revolving around the center was earth. These were facts, but these were in the realm of facts. But conveniently, and as science got more sophisticated and better measurements and new criteria, theories got methodology improved, all kinds of measurement improved, and all of a sudden fact went to the realm of fiction. And we got a whole new set of facts. And if you take a look at quantum physics today, I'm really interested in quantum physics, but I'll tell you, when I'm reading about this, the first time I see a chart, or too many charts, or too much complication, I tune out. The brightest and the best are able to communicate their very sophisticated, unique theories and views in a language, couched in a language that's available to you and me, to the everyday, to the layman. Sometimes when I see, in academia it's really common, when I see somebody buried in nomenclature, buried in language that's exclusive to the limited, small, narrow aspect of intellectual inquiry. It's their own it's the big boys' keywords. If you don't know the keywords, if you don't know the language, you can't, you got to talk the talk to walk the walk, is what they're trying to sell. But basically, when I found that it just got too convoluted. It's just verbal diarrhea. It's just with nomenclature, with terms couched in exclusivity. In other words, terms that are used specifically to limit, specifically to separate the availability of the information that you are presenting. It's like preaching to the choir. Academians get together in conferences. And I still believe, having been an academic, I believe that many conferences are just an excuse to go somewhere, to travel, and enjoy yourself and have a little vacation, which is nothing's wrong with that. But the attendance sometimes is a little bit sketchy at the event that was scheduled, the seminars. There'll be some popular ones, but the least popular ones, the least sexy ones, the least attractive ones will have a very limited participation. So it's this, in quantum physics, everything, all the facts, all the laws of science, the canons, scientific laws, have been called into question. Multi-dimension. Particles can be in two places at the same time. Instantaneous transportation from infinite distance. Something can be so far away, and it can be right over here in incredibly small, unmeasurable, in fact, amount of time. So everything that we take for granted is now fair game. It's now in play. So this gives pause to what is fact, what is fiction. I think we've already established that opinions and beliefs are experiential. Science discarded them as superstition. That's a key word that they used over again. This is superstition of the uneducated masses. Again, separation. Looking for their validity through elimination, through co-opting, through ignoring, not looking for a commonality, through exclusivity, not inclusiveness, separateness. Because separateness seems to have become the new God. And it's here when you start taking a look at where you fit in all this, where we fit into all this world order. Are you a conservative? And when I say conservative, all I really mean, what I can see of this conservative movement is, I want part of what you got. I want something from you. Capitalism, buy my whoop-de-doo. I want to take some of your money, but I want to keep all mine. Let's lower taxes. Thank you, Donald Trump. Let's lower taxes so I can keep mine and I can get some of yours. And the funniest thing is that while I'm keeping mine, I'm throwing you some peanuts and making it appear as if you're benefiting the middle class, tax break for the middle class. Well, the fact is that the middle class in America has gotten smaller and smaller. But traditionally, it's the people in the middle that carry the load. It's the people who do the work. The people in the middle are the workers. They allow the conservative to collect. And they're kept in line by being threatened to be part of the poor, the helpless, the unwashed, the people with virtually no power. So the conservative can threaten the middle class. Say, look, we're going to give you a job so you can work for me, increase my profits. And then I want you to buy. I want you to buy the goods or the ideas that I'm manufacturing, and maybe I'll give you a little bribe. And on the other side of the spectrum, where I've always been, is the liberal. I don't like this word very much because it's been bashed to uselessness. I'm more concerned, I'm more interested in an activist, more radical kind of behavior. Here's a radical idea. Why don't we become advocates for those without a voice? Why don't we support those that have no power? That's radical thinking. And you can see why that's a threat, both a threat to the powers that be, the 1%, the 1/10 of 1% actually, and the middle class. We have to stoke the middle class fear that they too will sink into poverty, powerlessness. People like Noam Chomsky, who I've admired as long as I've found his work. I was fortunate enough to see him here in Taiwan, and brilliant man. He's kept his edge. He's a radical. He's kept his edge, and usually, age does a funny thing with us. By aging, we're usually accumulating something. Property, power. And now we have a vested interest to protect it. Hence, as people age, they flee into conservatism. They move. The baby boomers love sex and rock and roll. The 60s people, my generation, have disappeared into the ranks of the conservatives. My generation now basically is the one that's holding at least the visible signs of power. The power behind what we can see is a different matter. So this tendency to become conservative as you have something to lose. But to remain radical and to support radicalism, you need to understand that there's nothing to lose. And that's where self-inquiry will come into play. What is important? Is it important that you have the most toys? Is it important that you have the most power over others? Power over others has a funny characteristic, that it only works as long as fear will keep people in line. When people have nothing to lose, we have revolution. And it crashes down the whole and brings something new, which will become structurized. It will become all the things that were revolted against in the first place. But once you understand what has value, unity, the universe. Your internal search will show you, help for you to begin to experience, to begin, so that you grasp experiential again. And you reinvigorate experiential, the concept, because you're performing an experiment. You're performing an experiment through your experience. So it takes us to a new level. Maybe experiential and experimental are not mutually exclusive. Maybe you can use them in your inquiry, in your spiritual inquiry. So you get to a point where you say, as you're on this journey, this journey to nowhere, this journey to now here. You can make the world more inclusive. Start to eliminate the separateness. Start to live the truth. And you'll see that maybe fact and fiction and opinions aren't that different after all. When you start to see facts, fictions, and opinion, any fact has equal validity or it's not valid, invalid. Every fiction may have a greater truth. Every fiction might be re-examined. But it's certainly obvious that my fiction and your fiction, as far as they go, are equal. No matter if they're completely opposite, no matter if they're diametrically opposed. And we've already put opinions in this shopping cart. So we're walking along with our shopping cart through the universal supermarket, and we're put facts, fiction, and opinions all in the same basket. We don't get involved in the dialogue of my fact is more factual than your fact. My fact is more valid than your facts. My beliefs are more valid than yours are. Well, let's dismiss all this and give them equal validity. How about that? Because in the scheme of things, they really don't mean much, do they? And the damage that they cause, the damage of belief, the damage of factual inquiring for the truth, but they mean facts, scientific facts, demonstratable, experimentally sound, experimentally able to be reproduced. To check the facts. Let's check the facts. Well, I'm suggesting let's chuck the facts. Let's put them in that shopping basket with belief with fiction, with fact, with opinion. Let's put in that shopping cart and kind of leave it in the market. Somebody will restock, I'm sure. Leave it to the workers to restock and put them back in place. So that for those of us that still are sleeping, that haven't begun the process of awakening, when you start to examine the truth of the true, and you do that by discarding the falsity of the false.